How did you decide to become a hacker?
Well, I'm not really sure what it means to become a hacker. That's like some guy in a hoodie who types really fast and stays up all night writing code and cracking passwords. It's not me. I just spy on people and see what makes them click. It's not a bad job.
Mark Hanning, CEO of Qualicart, set to report earnings after their blockbuster IPO.
So you consider this a job?
I put a lot of work into this. I'm not lazy. It takes research to figure out the key players, learn all about them, their families, their friends, what they care about. You have to understand the company's organization. I get a lot of my information from the sales department because they're always so quick and eager. They're hungry. People trust too easily. They don't look at the details. I do. Details matter. That's what I'm good at. It has to look completely believable. It has to look familiar. This is where research is important. It's not some generic piece of spam. It's an email from their boss with their company's signature. It's written in the voice of the boss. It's what he would say if he were writing this.
What about the malware itself? How does that work?
Somebody else out there already wrote all the code that does the actual attack. I'm just using it in the attachment. My skill is in my ability to get a bunch of people to click on that attachment. I always wonder what it's like when the whole thing unfolds on their end, when the panic sets in.
Please leave your message after the beep.
Hey, this is Rajiv in finance. Call me as soon as you get this. Something's up with my laptop. I can't.
Katie, are you on your way into the office? Something's going on with our file servers.
Karen in HR, our benefits dashboard seems really slow. We're getting calls from users on it. Give me a call when you get this. Joining conference now.
Apparently, there's a malware attack targeting our main...
It's ransomware. They're holding us hostage.
We're locked out of everything. I can't even check my phone. What about the backup?
That will take days.
We need this fixed now. Pay it. We don't have a choice. We're reporting earnings in 2 hours.
But how do we know that
Just
they'll...
pay it. Put every single person on getting us back up and running. That's the only priority now.
Okay, it's done.
I have the decrypt key. Mark, we have a big problem. The ransomware was just to distract us. They got inside. They got everything. Customer data, financials, everything.
Qualicart is reeling today from the news that hackers have released the personal information of nearly
The
2
Nasdaq
million
closed
customers.
lower today, led by Qualicart, which was down 14% on news that their recent data breach may be far worse than the company
Its stock
originally
fell to a
acknowledged.
new all-time low on news that CEO Mark Hanning is stepping down after what is turning out to be one of the worst breaches of personal information in recent history.
Do you feel bad about releasing the personal information? All the financials? All the money that was lost?
All I did was get the files. I'm not the one that decided to release them. I'm not the one that shorted the stock. Somebody else had their reasons for that. It's above my pay grade. I was paid to do a job, and I did it well. And that's what's expected of anyone, isn't it? Anyway, markets bounce back.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I showed this video to my kids yesterday and they asked me, Dad, was this real? It's kind of scary. And I said, unfortunately, it was based on a true story and there were many incidents like this. Actually, did you know that last year in 2021, we had one attack like this every 11 seconds? Crazy, right? Yeah, ransomware is definitely the most imminent and fast-growing threat. In the next 40 minutes or so, I'm going to try and demystify ransomware for you and share some defense strategy and best practices. And by the way, Barry from Cisco. I'm a cybersecurity technical solutions architect. And I've been focusing on cybersecurity and networking for 20 years. I'm honored to be here to share on ransomware today. In 2021, if we look at the data, 2021 was Yet another most disruptive year with pretty much broke all records. The total cost of ransomware last year was 20 billion, and on average, it costs each victim about $2 million to recover from an attack. And average ransom demand soared to 220,000. As you might know, back in 2018, this was about $6,000. And so it went up almost 40 times in 4 years. And many incidents made news last year. You might even remember a few of them. Among them, there were healthcare, government entities, universities, all sorts of businesses, even security and cyber insurance companies. What's shown here were about half of the reported incidents in 2021. I just couldn't fit all of them here, sadly. So we had the largest ransom demand, which was $50 million from Acer. And the most impactful ones like Colonial Pipeline, which was forced to shut down, causing gas shortage in the East Coast. And also supply chain incidents like Kaseya, which I'll mention a little later. So what did we learn from all of these incidents? First, it seems a lot of individual and businesses didn't realize how critical their computers, their data, and infrastructure were. Because just like tap water, you turn it on and the water always flows because it's too easy and it just simply works. And we tend to take them for granted and forget how important they were to us, until we get locked out of it. So ransomware attacks are increasingly profitable. Thus, they were also very well funded and were able to evolve rapidly in both technical aspects and also business model. Ransomware as a service, where ransomware cartels rent their code to others and take a share of the payment. They even offer technical support to them. The attackers being financially motivated, nowadays when they get a foot in the door, they almost all of them try lateral movement and hunt for high value and high impact targets, what we call big game hunting. And also there were more and more double extortions, meaning exfiltrating your data out and threatening you that they're going to release it to the public. It's now a very common pressure tactic to get victims to pay. There's also reports of triple extortion, that meaning the attackers threatening not just the victims, but also their customers and their partners, whoever they do business with. For example, there was a Finnish psychotherapy clinic. Although they paid the ransom, and attackers still turned to their clients, threatening with releasing their therapy session notes. Very scary. And these are direct contributing factors why total costs of ransomware were exploding recently. So now I guess we're all nice and depressed. Let's find out usually how ransomware attacks take place. Like you saw a little earlier in the video, the attackers do a lot of homework, understanding the business, the people, the organization, and their relationships, and then they send carefully crafted emails with malicious payload or links. Usually harmless looking, but once you click, you'll get a Trojan which allow the attacker to gain control over your system remotely, usually through command and control, or what we call C2 connection. And the next step would be evading detections, of course. Some malware even stay dormant for quite a period of time, making it very hard to detect even with antivirus or sandboxing technology. And they try lateral movement and pivot into critical systems, harvest credentials, and try to exfiltrate data, which will be used for double, triple extortion like I mentioned earlier. And the last step is to encrypt your files, display a message, and demand a ransom in exchange for the key to decrypt. It might sound like a complex, series of maneuvers, but nowadays hacking is not rocket science anymore. There are many free and commodity tools and Trojans, whatever it is out there, that are powerful yet super user-friendly. Like this one, Social Engineering Toolkit, got beautiful manual interface, And there were increasing use of red team tools like Cobalt Strike, which was actually made as a penetration testing tool. Attackers use it to maintain persistence on the systems and also avoid detection and mimicking legit traffic. Right, so lots of tools out there. And besides email, there are many techniques to get initial access to your environment. Either compromised or malicious websites could be used to host malicious payload, or vulnerabilities that were left unpatched, removable media, harvested credential which give attackers access to your critical systems, even to cloud services or your backup, to wipe your backup or destroy it or so on. But the ones mentioned above, if we're careful enough and have adequate security measures, we can avoid them from happening. But the last one, which is called supply chain attack, is a real challenge. Supply chain attack means legit distribution system like Kaseya, which we mentioned a little earlier, or SolarWinds and other managed service provider platforms that are usually trusted, because we trust them and we make our systems trust them because they're doing legit stuff, and we know that. And they are now used to deliver malicious payload. They are becoming attackers' favorite method nowadays because they can easily gain access and control over massive number of endpoints and across different businesses. So now understanding how ransomware prevails today, let's get to the main course, which is our defense strategy. So first of all, backup is definitely a key measure, no questions asked. It helps to avoid loss of data and in some cases avoid paying the ransom. When Colonial Pipeline was impacted last year, although they paid the ransom and got the key, but the decryption process was way too slow, so they had to rely on their own backup at the end to restore their systems. And actually 57% of businesses that were hit by ransomware were successful in recovering their data using a backup. But devil is always in the detail. A few things that we need to ask ourselves oftenly, like, where is our backup? Is it local or is it in the cloud? Is it immutable, meaning it can't be destroyed or modified or thrown away by the attackers or lock you out, right? Also, have we ever tested our system, our backup? Can we actually restore our services? And have we even considered the people and the process that's involved to do this? Right? And also, how long does it take to restore the data? Another topic that comes up often is cyber insurance, which helps to cover some cost if we were to pay the ransom. But I just want to call out that this is, it has a lot of limitations. One, it's not a defense strategy and it does not protect us from things like double extortion or another attack, right? In fact, 80% of victims who paid the ransom probably got another attack soon after. And we definitely cannot solely rely on cyber insurance. And second, we must meet all the compliance requirements that the insurance company demand to be covered. And make sure you understand and carefully review all the requirements, especially technical requirements when you're shopping around for cyber insurance. And also remember, not all decryption keys that you paid for actually works. You could get corrupted data, and like I mentioned earlier, the decryption process could be way too slow to be useful. And yeah, but if of course, it's nice to have in addition to security measures, and if you decide to get cyber insurance, you are required to have mature security in place. And having a strong security investment can help to reduce the cost as well. And shameless plug here, Cisco can definitely help in these situations. And since I mentioned Cisco, I'd like to introduce Cisco Talos, the Talos team. Talos is the largest non-governmental threat intelligence organization. They see more threats, more malware, more attacks than any other organizations out there. And if they see more, we can block more, right? And take the advantage away from the attackers. Talos is definitely fighting the good fight every day. They share their actionable intelligence, not just within Cisco and their products, but also to open source intel sharing, third-party programs, even other vendors and government agencies. And they do this all for free. On the other side, they also provide incident response service, meaning if you are attacked, and you can pick up the phone and call them 24/7. They even send people on site to help if needed. A lot of the knowledge and best practices that I'm talking about, that I'm sharing today, were actually from Talos' experience dealing with ransomware and other threats on a daily basis. So thanks to Talos. And now back to backup and cyber insurance that I covered. They are what I consider reactive measures. They can't really help avoid threats. And now let's focus on preventative measures, because ideal situation would be if we could avoid ransom attacks as early as possible. So I summarize our strategy into 5 layers. Now let's peel the onion together. The first layer is web security, including email, web, and DNS. And I'll just build this out and show you all layers. Security monitoring, segmentation, advanced threat protection, and the last layer is incident response services. Okay, so let's start with the first layer. So email has definitely been the #1 threat vector for the longest time. There are trillions of scams and phishing out there every year, and I believe we all agree that email security is a must-have for individuals and organizations. However, think about this. Our systems are only as strong as the weakest link, right? And the weakest link in organizations is definitely always people. And people influence security more than technology and policies. No questions asked, right? And so that's why it's super important to have adequate awareness training to your employees. Train them on, of course, yourself as well. Train them on phishing and how to identify them. Avoid clicking shady looking links and attachments, and also regularly do simulated phishing campaigns inside your organization, right? Identify and track who got tricked and send maybe just-in-time training to them, like how to avoid this from happening again, right? So what should you look for to avoid clicking on shady links like this again? And if there are people who constantly get tricked, double clickers, or even more than that, it might make sense to escalate to their manager. And better yet, dynamically build policy in your email security to automatically apply stricter policies to these users, right? That would be the best practices. And another thing that a lot of people neglect, they maybe just don't know about it, is DNS. DNS is actually a fundamental step and security measure for us. First of all, what's DNS, right? So basically, it's kind of like an internet phone book, right? But before you call Cisco.com or Google.com, you don't really know their number. You're just calling their names, and DNS help to resolve their name into a number, into an IP address. So it's the first step for anything to connect to the internet. And that is not just limited to your phones, your laptop, but not just IT stuff, but OT, right? Everything pretty much uses DNS. And it's the first step before you do anything. So we get to capture everything from all the devices, and nearly all devices use DNS. So it's a perfect first layer of defense. And as you might know that 91% of the known malwares relies on DNS. For ransomwares, they use it to gain command and control, to exfiltrate data, to redirect traffic, even encryption key exchange. Ransomware is pretty much almost harmless if they can't do anything like this, right? For example, these are some well-known ransomwares, and as you can see, they pretty much use DNS for a ton of things. So preventing malware with DNS is very efficient, and we can stop a lot of web threats and email-based infections, and we can also stop command and control callbacks, right, and encryption key exchange, like I mentioned. And with very efficient deployment. Like basically the easiest you can do is basically by pointing your DNS to the umbrella DNS, or what we call open DNS servers, and it's take basically 5 minutes to make that change. And also, DNS deployment actually can make things faster for you. Can you believe that, right? So it's a win-win situation. Security can actually make things faster because we, like within Cisco and OpenDNS, we have 38 data centers worldwide, and we can actually make the service reliable as well. Like, in the past there were outages caused by DNS, and Umbrella users never took a hit. And things go faster because these servers are scattered all over the place, and we have 6,000 peerings with the major ISPs, and we make sure that you're always taking the fastest route. So that's DNS. And the next thing that I want to talk about is the second layer, which is security monitoring. And that would include things like traffic monitoring and baselining. So what does that mean, right? So a lot of companies are suffering from these problems. The number one problem is always visibility. Like, you don't know what your DevOps is doing, right? So people using applications that's not approved by IT, that's what we call shadow IT. And cloud sprawl, meaning your employees could be spinning up VMs out there, and forgot about it. And maybe there's no protection on them and bring them bad guys into your systems, or could be just sitting there wasting money. And there are permissive configurations allowing way more things than you should, and operational risk. People make mistakes. There could be a badly written script that break things, and compliance risks like PCI and stuff, and lots of risks that we're facing every day, and these are all due to visibility issues. So what if we could cover all of the different use cases, whether it's cloud, it's SaaS, it's Kubernetes, it's containerized application that we have, or on-premise stuff. And for users, whether they are on-premise or they are roaming, they're out there, a lot of mobile users today. What if we can know all the entities, all of these entities, and we can see every conversation, and we understand what is normal for our application? Like, your web server only sends about 50 meg of data to the database on a daily basis, something like that, right? And also, if we could be alerted on change, especially when it's really malicious, like, say for example, your database all of a sudden start to send data into an IP address in North Korea. No offense, but just one example, right? And what if we could respond to threats very quickly, right? So this is what we can do using systems and measures to have proper management and monitoring, and we can achieve things like being able to identify failed access attempts, right, and DDoS and amplification attacks, and data exfiltration. This is the key for ransomware, because to avoid any double extortion or triple extortion, right? The key is to identify those are potential data filtration and stop them as early as possible. And also unusual geography, other country that you don't do business with, we should look out for. And also connections to a suspicious destination, maybe a known malicious destination. Those are all things that we should be super careful about. And also things like encrypted traffic. Nowadays, the majority of the traffic is encrypted. So with web traffic, it's easy to do because we can decrypt them and we can look for malicious activities going on in there. But web traffic is not all of them, right? So there's a lot other encrypted traffic out there, and we can't always decrypt stuff as much as we want, because there are a lot of different regulations out there, compliance requirements. So what if we can detect malicious activity without having to decrypt traffic? That's what we call encrypted traffic analytics. So we can identify malicious payload can even tell you what the virus is without even decrypting. And how it works is basically we look at the patterns of the data, right? So we look at client is sending how many packets and the size of the packets to the server and the server responding. And with that, we can draw a pattern. Like if you're doing Google search, it's very easy to tell because first you open the page and you download the page, and then you start entering the keywords. And those keywords trigger incremental searches inside Google. So you can see the traffic pattern looks like little lines going up and down, right? And then the final result from Google. So we can tell that's a Google search. And also we can identify command and control, right? So when it's initiating, we can see the pattern pretty much all look very similar. And we can also identify exfiltration and key logging because the pattern looks the same in all of those scenarios. So this is a very interesting technology that you can easily implement and be able to identify malicious traffic in your environment, right? So, but in summary, being able to monitor your traffic is a key, and also be able to baseline your what's going on, and when you have malicious activity, you can get alerted right away. Those are key to avoid data exfiltration and other things that ransomware does. And the next one would be segmentation. So how's your network hygiene, right? Do you mix your guest access and your corporate access, right? Or do you expose your services to the internet without authentication or something like that, right? That's basic network hygiene. And the next level would be zero trust, right? So when it comes to network hygiene, there's really no golden standard, right? So at least don't expose your services directly to the internet. Have a firewall there, right? So something like that. Or maybe we should ask ourselves questions like, does this temperature sensor really need to have access to our finance database server, right? Seriously, one of the casinos in Vegas got their data stolen all due to a temperature sensor in the fish tank. So I'm not saying that we need to have very granular control like this, but all of these efforts actually pays off, right? So they help to reduce the attack surface, making it almost impossible for our adversaries to do lateral movement inside our network. So it could be like from simple access policies or ACLs or to very granular control like this. And what is zero trust, right? Zero trust is a fundamental change. In simple terms, it just means that trust has to be earned. Each transaction, on a transaction basis, the users need to prove who they claim they are, and then granted access to only applications they're entitled to. With zero trust, would be able to support all modern use cases, including cloud, mobile users, and hybrid environments. But that doesn't mean that our users need to jump through the hoops just to get to what they're entitled to access, right? We don't want to slow them down, wasting time and costing them to frustrate. But actually, quite the opposite. Security can be an enabler. We should be improving users' access experience and not making their life miserable, right? So that's why zero trust and part of it is multi-factor authentication. The key success factor is to make sure people's experience is really good, right? So for example, multi-factor authentication, like I said, is very effective against ransomware. Because even if they were able to steal your passwords and credentials, they cannot use it because we simply added another factor besides what which is your password. We also ask what you own or what you are, like a one-time password or your fingerprint or things like that, right? And so that even bad actors have your credential, they still are unable to authenticate. And another thing is your admins would be alerted on these failed attempts, right? And also multi-factor authentication solution, there are a lot of them. All of them can do this, but for this effort to be really successful, we need to support as many applications there are, enable users to self-enroll in minutes to reduce IT's workload, and most importantly, make it super simple and fast for the users. No need to enter a one-time password. I kept joking, like imagine my grandma trying to enter like a constant changing pane, right? We replace that with super simple push notifications, right? All the users need to do is click yes, and bam, they're in. And if we want to further secure and simplify, there's also passwordless, right? So that enables user to log in with their biometrics like Face ID, fingerprint, or Windows Hello, etc. Right? So not even need to enter their password. So access, is easy, but how do we know that we can trust that device, right? So is it managed? Is encryption on? Is passcode protected? Is it jailbroken? Right. So that requires us to properly monitor the devices and their status, and make changes to the policy. Make the user do multi-factor authentication again, or lock them out if the device is jailbroken all of a sudden, right? And Zero Trust, we just covered the workforce piece, and which is secure the users and their devices. There's also workload security, which is protecting your applications no matter where they are, and enable microsegmentation of your applications. So if one application or a server is compromised, it cannot allow movement to your other critical services. And also workplace security, which is securing your network, including IoT. So Zero Trust is a very comprehensive approach to secure access. Next thing would be advanced threat protection. So it means visibility and response on your endpoints and everywhere else. If the attacker were able to get through all of the other layers like we discussed, it must be pretty much a brand new threat that we don't know yet. And our next battleground would be naturally on the device and endpoint level. So this layer is called advanced threat protection, which really is endpoint security. And let me show you Cisco's approach is what we call C1's block everywhere. All the known threat intel is shared among all the control points across infrastructure, a firewall, endpoint, network, web, email, and cloud. If anywhere we see an unknown file, it can be analyzed in real time by our malware analytics engine, which is lives in the cloud or on-prem, which runs malware in a sandbox pretty much, and provide its disposition very soon, right? So if in some cases disposition changes after the fact, like it was a unknown and now it would determine it's malicious, that will trigger retrospective actions to clean the malware, like email security can quarantine the email, or endpoint security will quarantine the malicious file, or we could even isolate that PC so it cannot spread the virus even further. Same thing for cloud, right? So on top of that, each control point has its own specific set of engines. For example, email security has anti-spam, data leakage prevention, and etc. And on the endpoint aspect, right? So it also has its very own specific engines as well. Sorry for the eye chart here. I'll just call out a few of things here. Besides file reputation and signature-based antivirus, there's also ransomware protection, which monitors behavior of processes. Say one process reads directories and start to rewrite a bunch of files with different hash values. It's probably ransomware encryption that's happening, right? So we can stop that from happening. Although we might lose one file or two, but we can stop the bleeding very quickly. So we correlate network flow and avoid data exfiltration and prevent exploits by randomizing the memory space, right? And also, if needed, we can isolate an endpoint so it can't spread the malware until the endpoint gets triaged and threat was mitigated. It also gives us very detailed visibility into file and device trajectory to show us which process enabled another process and show you how that malware actually traversed through your network and got detonated on that endpoint, right? So you can use that for forensics and figure out what actually happened. And now we've covered 4 layers of security measures. Now let's say worst case scenario, if we had a ransom incident and or we pick up some trace of compromise. Don't panic. We can call for help. It's strongly advised that we have some sort of incident response services, someone we can call 24/7. Talos is our guy, right? So they provide incident response services. Like I mentioned, you can call them for emergency. They operate 24/7. But the real icing on the case on the cake here is that they also provide proactive services, like helping you to build a incident response plan and help you to define your incident response playbooks, what to do when something happens, when an incident occurs. Test not just technology but also your people and your processes, what to do when something happens, right? And also test your readiness. Are you ready for an incident? And also tabletop exercise to show you and to test how you respond correctly to incidents. And also they do assessments, right? To assess your or are you currently compromised, right? So if you don't already know, they can help you do that. And also threat hunting if there's a known threat in your environment. And also things like training, right? And also purple team, like they can play the bad guys and and help you with defense. And also they can provide you intel on demand, right? And also assessment, like whether your architecture is well defined to deal with ransomware or deal with other threats. And also we mentioned about cyber insurance. Cisco has an existing relationship with a lot of providers, and if they're not listed here, we can reach out to them and work with them as well. So which means definitely could help you with your cyber insurance. And also there are a lot of different differentiators for Talos, right? So because it's, like I said, is world's #1 threat intelligence organization, and they also provide all of those proactive services. Okay, so those are the different layers of protection that we can offer. And also I would like to mention that we do have a lot of tools, and now we have covered a lot of different solutions that can help you with protecting your environment. But how do I know what do I need to better protect my environment, right? And what is really relevant to my business and my use cases? So we have so many different solutions that we touched on, but we also have a tool that can help you identify what are the gaps that you might have in your current environment. By basically, you can go to this tool called CiscoSecurityBlueprint.com and answer a few questions, like depending on what you choose, up to 21 questions, and you can get a report kind of like this. So basically, we can evaluate all of your, basically your business use case right now and help you identify what are the protections that you currently have, and in what aspect you could be at risk, and what aspect you're not secure at all. And this is a vendor agnostic tool, right? Because you can see here we did not mention any Cisco security tools or products. We're basically just focusing on the capability itself. And as you can see, some of the technology that we mentioned here, we don't even offer, like honeypot. Cisco don't offer that kind of technology. But this can be used as a really good reference for you to focus on things that you could improve, or basically have a discussion with your teams on what you need to do next, right? So that is what we call security blueprint. And next would be call to action, right? So try the gap analysis, try the Cisco security blueprint, or if you want to, have a one-on-one kind of experience, right? So we have what we call Cisco Safe, that is a very detailed workshop, and in that session, usually half a day, right? We do a lot of whiteboarding and understanding your business and help you identify the gap specifically for your organization. And if you want to play with ransomwares and you learn about ransomware defense in action, we have a workshop and a ransomware attack and defense lab that is very well defined, and you can get some hands-on experience, and you can also try defending against them with the tools that we offer, not just Cisco, right? But also you get some free comics. So here's the link and the QR code to get access to this. And I have the link and QR code for all of the things that I provide, and there are some other resources. Like we do regular threat hunting workshops, and there's a blog from Talos that you can go and read. They post very often on all the recent threats, and we've done security outcome study and lots of good stats there you could refer to. And we also have check out our security promotions and free trials. So that's all of my sharing. Thank you for your time, and have a good one.